And having known you on a personal level, it's great to share this space with you.
Thank you.
Welcome. Let's start off with your early life, primary education, and transition to secondary education.
Well, surprisingly, my parents put me in school when I was 2 years and 2 months old, despite being an only child at that time. I went to Muslim girls' school, and them days you had CPE, so I did mine until standard 7, and I left Muslim girls' school at the age of 12 years and 2 months when I finished my standard 7 to then go to high school.
Interesting. So, your high school, you went to...
Well, surprisingly, from a Muslim school, my parents then decided I needed a broader base, so put me in a Catholic school. So I was in Our Lady of Mercy for 4 years, where I did my O-levels. And then they decided, and remember, I had no choice. It was parents tell you go here, you go there. Because you don't pay your fees, so it's whatever they say. They put me into Highway Secondary School, which only had girls at A-levels and not at anywhere else. So there were 3 girls in 1,000 boys. It was an all-male school except for the A-levels.
Yes, that was a change of environment, you know, from an all-girls school to go to school and A-levels. Only 3 girls surrounded by boys. How did it feel? Intimidating?
No, that explains why I'm so loud. Because when you go from an all-Catholic school and an all-girls school, you become loud, because when you go to a boys' school, you need to make noise because you're part of them. So that's the reason why there's all this loudness. And it was, you adjusted. I mean, you never really recognized the fact that there were boys. I know it sounds surprising. I was about 17, 18. But it never made a difference. It was like they were just guys. They were just there.
You girls must have been pampered with all these boys around you.
I wish that was the case. Oh, no, they used to bully us.
Now, growing up, you developed an interest in cricket as you were at the Sarali Club with your father at that point in time, right?
Yes.
What was the scene then? And as you were getting ready to join university, it was at about the same time, I guess.
Yes.
You became a member of Sarali Club, which was a first for a woman.
Yes.
What was the process of getting membership as a woman in Sarali Club?
I think they were horrified. They couldn't deal with the fact that a woman had applied to be a member. So we put in the forms and they just accepted them, because, you know, when you can't get, you're so shocked, you just say yes. Shock and awe. Shock and horror.
So what was that experience like?
Well, Sarali has been my home club since I was about 2.5 years old. I used to watch cricket with my dad. And so Sarali was where I used to go to almost every Sunday. We'd go to watch the matches. And that's where I grew up. So they also, in fact, most of the people who were on the committee at that time, and the chairman was the late Bashir Mauladad. He was the chairman, and he had seen me grow up. So, you know, they all knew me. And it was...
So you were accepted as an equal?
I wasn't accepted as an equal. I was accepted as my father's daughter then.
Interesting. Let's move a little further. You went to the UK to study law. What was the reason for taking this career path?
Law? You know, everybody's asked me that question, and every time I think about it, I have a different answer. When one of the reasons was that I talked too much. So everybody thought when you talk too much, you'll become a lawyer. That was, don't ask me why, but everybody thought that. And I put it down to my parents giving me kasuku food when I was a child. So that's why I talked too much. But it was, and I guess I had certain people who I knew, who I'd seen being lawyers, and they inspired me. So, and in that, like I'm talking about the early 80s, it was either being a lawyer, a doctor, an architect, or, you know, so there was nothing like what
stereotypical parents' dream.
And in fact, today you have so many more options. I couldn't go and tell my father I was going to study English. He'd tell me I was out of my mind. And since he was paying for it, it was not happening. So it was, okay, I'll go and be a lawyer.
Now, one of your earlier tests as an advocate was facing the Court of Appeal judges when you had been on the bar for less than 5 years. And the environment could be intimidating back then. Tell us about this moment in your career and what impact it had on you as a lawyer.
Well, one of my first appearances was within 3 months of being admitted as an advocate when I went to the Court of Appeal. And I'll never forget that. So I went to the Court of Appeal, you know, you feel you're this hot shot.
Oh, within the first 3 months?
Within the first 3 months. So there was me going with my gown and my Sunday best, which was a suit that had been stitched in Nairobi by Gents Paradise. That was the best suit I ever had. So I go with that and my collar and my wig, and you go there, and I was dealing with a very senior advocate who's now deceased, and he brought up an issue saying that, oh, but this is the problem. And I'm looking at the three judges and I'm horrified. I don't know what to do. But they were really good. They were so sweet. They said, Ms. Janmohamed, please go back, speak to your senior partner, and come back. They actually gave me half an hour, and because our offices were at Old Mutual, which was on Kimathi Street, and the High Court was where the Court of Appeal is, where the Supreme Court is now, I rushed across, came back, got instructions. But that was the first impact it had on my life. That was my first appearance.
Right.
5 years into it, the one you're talking about was before I was 5 years in practice. The Court of Appeal, I had a run-in with a lawyer, and they said, and the Court of Appeal have put down that I was an advocate of impeccable record. So that was within 5 years of practice.
Let's go back to cricket now. You became an umpire while you were still in the early phase of your law career. What was the process of getting there? I'll just follow up with that. And then you served as an assistant secretary of the Kenya Cricket Association. What were the times then, and what marks did the board leave in the sport?
Well, in fact, when I was a pupil in '88 that I started doing my umpiring. I started going for my umpiring, not even when I became an advocate.
So it was before that?
Yes, when I was a pupil. So
and you were an official umpire at that point in time?
I finished my umpiring, and I think when I graduated is the same time that as an advocate of the High Court, I became umpire in Kenya as well. So that's how it sort of went together. I had to go...
The first female umpire in Kenya?
In East and Central Africa then.
Okay. Interesting.
So you go through your classes. I couldn't drive. Oh, to be precise, I didn't have a car. And there was no way my dad was going to let me go out at night on my own. So my poor dad used to be dragged every evening when I had to go for my classes, drive me to wherever we were going for the classes, hang around for about 2 hours. I have no clue what he did for 2 hours. He must have done something, and pick me up and bring me back home. And that went on for, I think, about 6 months, if I'm not wrong. It was a long time ago. And thereafter, you had to go through, you became an associate umpire once you completed your umpiring, you completed your written exams, and then you had to go for the oral thing on the ground itself, the practical. So you had to do 10 matches before you became recognized as a proper umpire, a full umpire.
Can we get back to those glory days?
What do you mean glory days?
When Kenya cricket was at a high, we were participating at international level, part of major international tournaments. We're not even qualifying for the international tournaments.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. Those glory days were glory days. If you look at the squad from around 19, and I am not taking away anything from the players and everybody who was there. Don't get me wrong on that. If you look at it from 1990 to 2003, we had almost the same players. There was maybe a few changes, like Tariq Iqbal was out, Edward Odumbe got out, Rajab Ali got out in 1996. But then you had your Steve Tickolos, your Maurice Odumbes, you had all those players who were there. And they went on right up till 2003. So there was that consistency, yes. There was a lot of international exposure. But remember one thing, other teams are coming up. You look at Afghanistan coming up. Who had even heard of Afghanistan then? You've got Nepal coming up. And that subcontinent, one thing I would ask anybody, please tell me, how can we create that culture of cricket that is there in the subcontinent? I mean, it's just passion. They say, it's cricket and then God.
Hope is there, inshallah. Now, another of your passions is philanthropy. One is helping girls get an education. You're very passionate about that. And at times, you never meet them. And they've never met you. Tell us a little bit more about that.
I came from a discriminated background as far as women and education was concerned. When I was going in 1983 to England on my own, and my parents didn't take me, I was given 2 bags, and at that time there was exchange control restrictions. I was given my check for the first quarter. In fact, it was a draft, not even a check, and my school fees. People came home before I was going away to study, telling my dad, no, don't let a girl go and study. So that for me is very I couldn't, and that for me, it really left a mark on my life that being a girl is not a crime. Being a girl is not a sin. And I know of girls who still go through that. It's improved over the years, but it's not where I'd want it to be. So I know of girls who will, if they don't get their school fees, their parents will get them married at 13, 14. And that's, for me, that's a crime. So I want them so that they can be independent. They don't have to be dependent.
There's so many girls that you're funding. Have you ever met them at a later stage in life?
No.
Any of them?
No.
Never?
I believe in the Bible, let your left hand not know what your right hand is doing. That's the Bible. So they don't need to know me. The only message I send when they finish and they want to meet me, I tell them, please, when they start working, go and educate 3 more girls. That's all I give, a message.
Excellent. Now, during the pandemic, you were involved in feeding 39,000 families and was one of the Kenyans who received the Mzalendo Award. There's a saying, like you just said, that your right hand should not know what your left is doing. Of course, this was such a big event that it was obviously publicized. But your general nature is not to let people know of what you're doing. But tell us a little bit about this amazing project that you did, where you were also awarded by the President Uhuru Kenyatta.
Well, COVID came as a shock to everybody. I mean, you saw people landing at JKIA with masks in January, February. None of us could understand what they were doing. And in March, in fact, it was March, that I went to the Land's office with a whole group of lawyers. And when we left Land's office, we were told that one of the people we were sitting with had been in touch with another person who had tested positive. Now, at that time, none of us knew what COVID was all about. It was still in the dark. So I had to go into isolation for 14 days. And my mom's a cancer survivor. And it was in a flat, in a room, 14 days. Because of my mom's vulnerable condition of being a cancer survivor, I had to make sure I was nowhere in touch with her at all. So I was sitting, my first few days was not the greatest, in the sense of, I'm not used to sitting in a room. I'm not used to just sitting down. And I started thinking, what can we do? And that's when the COVID idea came into my head, and I thought, well, there are going to be so many vulnerable people out there who need food. And that's when I started it. In the 14 days, I knew every supplier of flour, sugar, what their prices were. That's what I did for 14 days. And and while I was sitting there, I actually called some friends of mine. I said, I want to do this, give me money. I'm putting X amount, how much will you people be putting in? So they put in I've had great support from I&M Bank, APA Insurance. They were fantastic, GA. So I got that, and then I got volunteers. I even spoke to a client of mine who gave me a free warehouse on Mombasa Road, 6,000 square feet, to pack the food when we got the supplies in. And that's how it all started. And the one thing was, I went to places I had never been to in Nairobi. I was born in Nairobi. I grew up in Nairobi. But I went to places like Majengo, Tena. Kibra, I went only once because everybody was going to Kibra. But Eastlands is a forgotten part of Nairobi. And some of the statistics that I got there just horrified me as to what is happening in this country.
It's like a reality check, huh?
It was, yes. It was sad, but I made a lot of friends. And the security, the police were fabulous. Do you know, I would just call them the night before to say, I'm coming. They would have the security ready for me. They would have everything ready. And they just became my friends, and a few of them got promoted a year ago, and I told them it was because of me that they got promoted, of how they had helped me. But the security forces, they were fabulous.
That's great to hear. But I must commend you. Well done. That was a fabulous project, and so many people benefited at a very difficult time.
Yes.
COVID was difficult.
Yes, it was very difficult.
And we're feeling the remnants even now.
I ended up with COVID after that. But one thing I made sure was, you can get money, give people money. Big deal.
But you need to see it through.
I needed to see it through. I was there personally on every route. Everywhere we went. Except when I sent some food to Pokot and Samburu and those areas, I didn't go there because COVID restrictions. But otherwise, every place I made friends. And these people just had a friendly they felt that there was somebody there. And the best part was, in Majengo, we got somebody who gave us free noodles. I mean, I couldn't believe that. And just makes you realize how you take things for granted. So we put noodles in our care package. We used to call them care packages. So I got a feedback that these people don't like noodles. So I just tried to find out, why don't they like noodles? Apparently, they were just eating those noodles raw because they did not realize what they had to do with the noodles. So the person who had given me the noodles, I remember one morning at 7 o'clock, because we used to start at 6 in the morning, because by 9 o'clock we're out of there, we're all back to whatever we are doing. The person from the noodles place came, she went on a table, showed them how to make the noodles, and because we would do 600 families at a go. So everybody who was there got a bowl of noodles. And that was the first time those people realized, several of them, what noodles were all about. Now, these were things we took for granted.
Don't you think there's a need for these kind of projects to be ongoing? Because the need is there. There's so much suffering out there.
It is there, but I also believe that let's not have dependency. That's why I talk about education, because you can become
Find
dependent.
a solution.
Yes, it's like somebody said that we should not give the fish, we should give a fishing rod. I heard this sometime during the political scene, but I remember somebody saying that. I don't know who it was, but that's what it is. Give them life skills. Give them education. It's not everything has to be a formal education, but give them those skills in order for it to go on. Otherwise you can get over-dependent on handouts.
I agree with you. Now, as a lawyer, you do pro bono cases. How do you pick them?
You just need to walk through my door.
Okay, interesting. Is everybody watching?
And if I like you.
That's an open offer from Jackie. No, but that's a pretty good thing.
Yeah, and I do a lot, like I said, there are times that I've helped out FIDA, the International Women Lawyers that helps women. And there are friends who will tell me, look, there's a woman in trouble, help her out. Yeah. Or there's a child who's been mistreated.
Right.
But as long as it's not a criminal case, I'll look at it.
Fantastic. As we close, what are the changes that you have seen happen in the legal environment in terms of case management, public knowledge of the law, and faith in the system?
Well, firstly, when I was admitted as a lawyer, we were only 1,889 in 1989. 1,889 lawyers in this country.
Is that all?
That was what it was then. Today, we're over 20,000. Wow. Closer to 25. I'm just giving you what the changes are.
Yeah.
So we're a lot more lawyers. Judges were fewer. We didn't have courts in every county. We didn't have a Supreme Court. Your presidential petition didn't go to the Supreme Court. We now even have a small claims court, which is anything under $1 million shillings, and the law is you've got to finish it in 60 days. So those are the positive changes that have taken place. Another thing is that I remember when we used to go to court, there were mainly male judges. When I got admitted, there were only 2 women judges at that time, Lady Justice Awar and Lady Justice Alwatch. Those were your only 2 female judges in the High Court.
Yeah.
Now, I think it's almost on a 50-50 basis. Magistrates, you've got a lot. The workload at the magistrates is massive. And they are so unfortunate, for want of a better word. They don't even have researchers. They've got to churn out cases on their own. They don't have researchers. So the workload is heavy. Judges have now even got researchers. So life has changed, and there are more women lawyers, which we did not have in those days.
Yeah, I interviewed Lady Justice Joyce Alwatch about a week ago, and she talked about it, just her and Justice Effie Owo.
Yes.
And I think they inspired a lot of women thereafter.
Yes, they did. And like I said, you'd appear before them, and the best part was they would actually tell you if you were not properly dressed. They would tell you, I'm sorry, you're not coming into we can't hear you. They throw you out. But that
so they're quite strict with the dress code.
Yes, which is something that we've lost. I know people say it's what's up there that matters and not what you dress. But I know what Army Major said. The day you remove the dress code, the uniform, the Army is out on its own. It's the same. The day lawyers, if you can't tell a lawyer from who's a litigant in court, there's a problem. The faith in the system was the last thing that you had said. I think the faith in the system cuts both ways. I'm very optimistic. I have a lot of faith in the system as an individual. there are a lot of people out there who don't have faith in the system. But one of the biggest problems we have is, as soon as you lose a case, oh, somebody's been corrupted. It's not that you had a bad case or this was wrong. And so, you know, and the lawyers, some lawyers go and tell their client, oh, you know, the judge was paid or the magistrate was paid, and it doesn't help. But like I said, faith in the system, I've never had to sit there and think, oh, what, and if I do believe that my client may have compromised, it's not even true, my client and the file can leave my office, because that's something I can't accept.
It has been a pleasure speaking to Zehrabanu Janmohamed, also known in some circles as Jackie Janmohamed. She has told her story about navigating through her legal career, her sticky wickets of cricket and philanthropy. Former President Uhuru Kenyatta honored her with the Mzalendo Award for her work distributing relief food to families affected by the restrictions effected during the COVID-19 pandemic. It has been an extreme pleasure to host you, Senior Counsel. I am Fayaz Qureshi. Thank you for watching.